So this game was played in December 1954 when Bobby was only 11 years old. His 23-year-old opponent was Jacob Altusky, who was born March 24th, 1931. Altusky's still alive, by the way, 92 years old at present, and he was born in Bronx. He was the third child of Rabbi Judah Altusky. Jacob Altusky became a student at the Talmudical Academy in Brooklyn, and he was a member of the Brooklyn Chess Club. Now, for those who would say, oh, well, yeah, of course, the 11-year-old beat this guy because he was just a club patzer, it should be noted that Altusky scored a draw against international master Hans Kmoch at the Marshall Chess Club in 1947. Now, if e4, e5 didn't shock you on the first game, this will surely shock you. Bobby Fischer starting with d4. Of course, he was an 11-year-old. He didn't know better yet. Altusky with Robach's defense, and that's named for Karl Robach, who lived from October 1929 to September 2000. Robach was a leading Austrian chess player, and he was also a noted botanist. He had a PhD in botany, but he was the 1960 Olympiad gold medalist, Robach was, on board one, eclipsing even the reigning world champion of the time, Mikhail Tal. C4 by Fischer, and we transpose to the King's Indian defense with knight f6, and after knight c3, bishop g7, we have a normal variation. e4 and castles, bishop g5, d6 is the accelerated Averbach variation. That's named for Yuri Averbach. If you don't know that name, he recently passed away. Well, it's been a year now, but Averbach lived from February 1922 to May of 2022, passing away at the age of 100, and a very famous Russian grandmaster and author. Knight f3 is the Zinovets variation, and Zinovets is the name of a municipality in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern on the northern German island of Usedom on the Baltic Sea, and this line was pioneered in a tournament there many, many years ago. So next we have the Queen's Knight to d7 and e5 by Bobby Fischer. I give this a question mark. You can see the eval bar drops. The most common move is h3, which transposes back to the normal variation of the King's Indian, and black will play e5, d5, h6 hitting the bishop. The bishop comes back to e3, knight c5, super attacking the e-man, knight d2, adding a second defender, pawn a5 here, showing the most common book line, bishop to e2, and bishop to d7. Not played here. Let's go back. The 11-year-old Fischer playing e5. By the way, there is another line commonly played that you might be interested in, and that's bishop e2, and that's also answered by h6. In this line, white plays bishop h4 and maintains the diagonal here. That's answered by e5, d5, and g5, bishop g3, and knight h5. Okay, neither of those lines played, but they're the two most commonly played lines. e5 by Bobby Fischer, and d takes e5 gets an exclam from me. D takes e5, and even though this is not the best choice for white, this position has been reached nearly 19,000 times at the amateur level in recorded amateur games. Knight g4, e6, poking at this structure, and I personally prefer knight d e5 here as the response, and after takes, that hits the bishop, so bishop h4. You can play queen takes queen, but it relinquishes the open file after rook takes queen, and then you still have to play bishop h4. All right, but knight d5. Now, this blunder of knight g takes e5, speaking of the amateur's database, this blunder has been committed 700 times almost. So what should be played here instead of this knight takes pawn? Well, the best way to keep the pressure, if you will, is f6. That's going to compel white to capture that pawn, and now you got to do something with your bishop. Meanwhile, your king is out in the open. Not the best choice by black. Well, of course, this pawn is under super attack, isn't it? As even a blind caveman could see. That can be taken with check, and you're losing your queen anyway if you move the king, which is why I give this an inaccuracy. Since you're going to lose your queen anyway, you might as well go ahead and save yourself a pawn and keep your castle intact. Not that it matters at this point. He played king h8, knight takes pawn check, pawn takes pawn, and bye-bye queen. And Altusky resigned here as well. Rightfully so. There's nothing really for which to keep playing. I mean, yes, the white king is still in the center, but I mean, I'm up queen, man. I'm gonna push this right on up, open the H file, and that'll be that.